Okay, so in this session, we'll talk about something we heard pretty frequently lately, which is boom to bust. So, which is basically, I guess, refer to the phenomenon of frequently uh, repeated as we observed that some companies rise up as a new star and enjoy its glory for a while before it just find its own way down, you know, to become under or eventually gone, right? So we saw a lot of those. There was this, of course, we all talk about it. Even the MBA, classes discuss about it. Kodak, the glorious brand name for the film. Not that even the film is done. Of course, where's Kodak? They're still around, but they're not going to dominate the market share anymore because they missed the opportunity of basically catching up with the new technology, the emerging technology. Basically they stayed behind in the analog, kind of lagging in digital times. But was that just a so happened one strategic decision era led to all this? If you're a Taoist, basically you look at it this way, the perspective. It's everything has a lifespan. Okay, it's just a matter of a longer lifespan or shorter lifespan. So a lot of things bound to happen, just matter of timing. So when you have done this and that, to the best of your, within your power, your best effort and everything, you might delay that, but you cannot reverse the trend, right? So it's just like us human being. We were born and we were toddler and we observed and we learned things and we were so cute, and before you know it, we're old and have lots of time ugly too, right? I mean, what can you do about it? Nothing. It's beyond your power. So if you're a Taoist, you look at that with your peace of mind. Okay, it happens. It happens. Does that mean, oh, we don't even try to save our business or whatever that is a question? Let's review the history a little bit. Uh, let's talk about Europe, right? Italy back then, divided into three little, you call it state or republic or whatever. You had Venice, the Venetians, and you have the other two. Um, so they managed to stay on the top of Europe for a while. Why? Well, because they were working with the Ottoman Empire, on the other side of the, I guess Gibraltar Strait. So they blocked the trade, right? So they enjoy the monopoly on this side of the, in the Mediterranean area, on this side of the Gibraltar Strait. Yeah. So all the other European states back then, you want to like do the trade to boom your own economy. I'm sorry, uh, Italy, or what is Italy today, the Italians. Well, they were working with the Ottoman Empire, basically, effectively, to block all their neighboring states in Europe, right? Neighboring, not neighboring, but other European states. So they managed, you know, to remain on top of the, entire European region with their, booming economy. And of course, when you have a booming economy with that thriving culture that comes with, or, basically the economy produced, why? Because, hey, you got people with a little more money than others, and they start to look for something more than just get their stomach stuffed. And of course, um, you know, when you're economy is good long enough, then you start to looking for things that's more than just physical part of the satisfaction, and then that's where the culture thing started to you know boom, right? And so then the French rose up, right? So we mentioned the Sun King himself, Louis the 14th. You look at his ballet master, or his favorite guy in charge of opera. They were all Italians, but they changed their name into French. Why? This is basically the Italians were out, the French were in, right? So Louis XIV single-handedly, thanks to his ballet master, defined the movements. I don't remember exactly, somewhere probably 300 some ballet movement positions. He defined them, and that still is the way it is today, right? But it's more than just that. Okay, so he also told the whole Europe what's the proper etiquette, protocol. I mentioned that, how to throw a great party properly, elegantly. And nevertheless, he defined the civilization of Europe, right? But compared to the Italians, how long did the French manage to remain in the glorious top chair? Not too long. Don't quote me, but if my memory served me correctly, the Italians probably managed 300 or whatever, but the French only managed 200 years. I don't remember exactly. You guys could Google it up. But then when the French went down, we had the British. And the British did not actually this empire. They will never see supposedly they were never going to see the shadow. It was the sun, all around the globe. They were all over the place. How long did they manage to stay in that glorious chair again? Not too long. Before the Second Great War ended and the Americans rose up, right? So the Americans used to be a joke in Europe. It's like, the Americans, all they had was money. Well, look at now, right? So how long do you think the Americans will manage to stay on, the top of the world, not Europe? If you're a Taoist, you will know this is inevitable. The Americans will go down, okay? That's my country now. But hey, nothing I can do about it, or anybody else can do anything about it, because that's just a trend. What is that for Taoists? That's just a life cycle span. So you might as well just enjoy while you're still at it, right? So what is the evidence, left behind those one time, the booming and then busted, those, economy at what height, right? This is the curve. The lifespan goes up and goes down, right? What is the evidence of that? The peak. When you look at the Italian, what their best time, basically they left behind for all of us to benefit from opera, right? The first one you would think. And then the second, of course, a lot of Italian food. Of course, the Chinese will argue, oh, the Italian food. That's all Marco Polo brought in from China. And that wasn't even China. That was Mongolian occupied China. And after all the ruins, that's what Marco Polo's, thought, he saw. And he thought that was Chinese, right? So the Chinese will tell you, ravioli? Oh, that's a wonton. Okay. So pizza? Oh, that's just basically steampunk. They don't know how to, put things inside, to put on the outside and flat. It's, maybe the Mexican tell you that's tortillas, with a little thing on top. Oh, that's pizza, right? Spaghetti, linguine. Oh, that's just Chinese noodle, right? Well, we just put all that aside. But honestly, I'm a China man, but I really, really I love the, Italian food, not the one that you go to Roma and they did it for the tourists. I can do a better job than that. But the point is that, you know, you got the Renaissance, you got all this Italian painting beautifully. I mean, I can tell you a whole bunch of names that was basically the Italian contributors to the, you know, art history in Europe. But all that, obviously, when you had the, you know, back then, the nobility, Italian nobility, so they had more money than just the average Joe in Italy. They wanted, you know, to basically appreciate their lifestyle. You know, they celebrate their wealth, their fame, their, you know, social ranking. And so the artists in Italy back then, what do you think they were? As far as I'm concerned, they were like slaves. Okay, they're better than slaves because, you know, basically, oh, they own themselves, right? But how did they make a living? They didn't get paint whatever they wanted. They had to paint whatever their customers want, whether that was a church or whether that was a some kind of duke. Hey, they pay you, right? And so the European music makers, same way, okay? Because, hey, the nobilities or the royalties, they love music, but so they need to employ some guy who can make music for them, right? That wasn't the case in the ancient China. The Chinese artists did not do this for somebody else. They did it for themselves, expressing themselves freely, abstractly. They didn't have to make a living out of that, because if they did, that would be the very unfortunate thing. Eh? So when you compare the Chinese art history with the European art history, you will see the difference. But back to the point, we were talking about the boom to bust, right? And we talk about all this, you know, country up, you know, on their way up, you know, rising to the top and then come down. Now, here's the point about the Daoism. If you're good Daoism and you're designing a garden in your backyard or front yard or whatever, you would definitely avoid anything in a circle as far as the shape goes. Because if it's round, circle is round, of course, you know. If it's round, that means it's full. When it is full, in the Chinese, you know, Taoism sense, it starts to, you have to worry about overflow. And that symbolize, you see this curve on the top at the peak point. After you pass the peak point, what happens? It goes down. That's the trend, right? Before the peak point, you're always going up. You know you're on your way up. But once you pick the perfect, you reach the peak point, the perfect, that's done. You're on your way down, okay? So in the landscaping design, at least in mine, okay, because I study all this traditional Chinese stuff, being a Chinaman, I do not want anything like my koi pond. My koi pond do not have the circle, okay? It's irregular shape. And then, you know, basically, there are a lot of things that you worry about. But this thing is philosophically, I think it's a very good point. When you expect the perfection and you actually arrive there, what does that mean? That means you're from this point on, you're on your way down. Okay, that's a trend. There's nothing you or anybody else can do about it. So you're always hoping you're not at the peak yet. You have, even though you try to achieve perfection, but you don't really want to be there. You want to get there, you know, the trend, okay, the process on the way to there, but you don't really want to arrive there, because once you do, you're on your way down, okay? So we talk about the Italian food. So what about the French food? I'll tell you, the French, you know, the French, they know how to party, okay? You talk about a banquet, oh, that's sophisticated, you know, all these variations. I remember one time my teacher, actually English teacher, but he was half French, half English. His last name was de Havilland. He said, "Oh, in France they have at least 300 different kinds of cheese." I love cheese. I haven't tried even 30 though. But 300, that's a lot. So what does that mean? That means the economy actually could afford the surplus. Okay, when you're worried about, can I stuff my stomach? Do you care 300 different kinds of cheese? You don't, right? And then the British, okay, they were on top. And you go to England, or, you, you find the very sophisticated English, typical English dinner, okay? They may have some fancy chinaware or dining ware, okay? They have the probably somewhat sophisticated protocols. But what about the English food? For me, when you look at a, cuisine of certain nation, let's try to see if we can find out the highest format, okay, the style, the sophistication. When you go to maybe I haven't got my chance. I challenge whoever, show me how sophisticated the English, dinner could be. Personally, for me, that's evidence that the British did not, really rise up high enough before it came down. And now we talk about American food. What is the American food? Somebody suggested apple pie, but I would say, okay, Cajun food, right? Creole food. Those were from the Louisiana, a piece of land Americans bought from the French for $3 million. Was that American food, or was that French colonial thing? Who knows? I love them. Those taste so good. But here comes one thing. Is it just about taste good, or the cuisine has to be presented with certain, style, as far as the presentation goes. You go to Japan, okay? So the regular Japanese food, they're for commoners, especially the ones from the eastern side of Japan called the kando, okay? As versus from traditionally, old Japan on the west side called, Kansai. You will see, sushi, sashimi, the presentation. I mean, it takes about 7 years apprentice to do what? You never do any cooking. It's all about the cutting. Select the material and cut them in the perfect shape, and then present, decorated. Do you think the commoners who were worrying about 3 meals a day actually they were worrying about the presentation? No. But if your food is not sophisticated enough, what does that mean? That means you don't really have a very sophisticated social structure. Okay, you have the people have a little more money, and people have no money. People have somewhat money, right? That's it. So people have more money. They say, "Oh, I wanted something different," but it takes generations before you build up your sophisticated, taste and style, right? So this is not just what the French say. Oh, the manner, or when I see people, this is what I do. No, I think it goes way beyond just that. Okay. Now we talk about the Chinese food. First of all, if you don't like Chinese food, you don't like Chinese food. That's that. That's acquired taste, right? And the Chinese food, there's a lot to it, the presentation. Before you actually put your chapstick on it, it has to look right, the color and everything. So when in a banquet, let's say you have 100, well, that's for the royal family. Let's say for the rich people, but not, social ranking wise. You have, let's say, 20 dishes served, over, which is no big deal, okay? Over a dining table. They have to look different in color, okay? And when you taste them, they cannot taste all the same. Oh, one salsa for everything. I'm sorry, that's not Chinese cuisine. That is, I don't want to comment on that. But so you have to look right, you have to taste right, and they're all gonna have to be different. And on top of that, there's a context you have to worry. You have to interpret each dish is designed. They don't just happen they're all thrown in there the way it is. No, there's a design, and you have to name every single one of them with this cultural thing to give some value in context, not just a taste. Do you think that's it? No. The Chinese cuisine has something no other cuisine from any other country, okay, or culture. Why? Or where? Or how? The Chinese, and this is not just the royal family or even just the monarchs. This is actually down to, the everyday Chinese. You have to understand, okay, in the Taoist culture, all the herbs, okay, you use in the cuisine, that's not just like the ingredient of flavor. They actually play a role as a medicine. So by Taoist, standard, everything and anything goes into your food. They're regarded as herb, whether that is, let's say, vegetable, rice, noodle, everything. The Chinese herb medicine studied all that, okay? So when they take your pulse, this is the Chinese herb medicine way, and they could tell, your physical state, in terms of health condition. So they tell you need to have more of this, less of that. So on top of all those presentation, the taste and all that, you're supposed to, and each individual is very different. You're supposed to eat certain things and stay away from certain other things. And that's the Chinese cuisine, okay? So let's say you just had surgery. I mean, there are millions of the examples. I'll just give you one. You just had a surgery, okay? So you don't want this one of the cut, basically you want it to heal soon, right? So then you don't want to eat any shrimp, okay? And so it's not just that. You can go on for at least a dozen things that you don't want to eat right after that, okay? So we're talking about, the Chinese economy stayed very long, steadily good economy. Why do you think that old Chinese empire had this, ignorant attitude, like, oh, outside the border of China, it's all, barbaric people. What do you expect from them? I don't want to import anything. They're not worthy. Yeah, that ignorance actually came from somewhere. Because, hey, compared to the other cultures, they thought they got everything else. They don't need anything else. They got everything, right? So we talk about a boom to bust. China, after 1,000 years, okay, this system, basically, regardless your background, your upbringing, total equal. So if you pass the 3 levels of examination, you become somebody, which is basically a candidate for your commission by the royal court, and you become a gentleman, right? And that's unique only in Chinese history. So that was the reason the Chinese basically boom to bust. Basically, the empire, started by somebody, right? The founding emperor started this empire. And then, his son, his grandson, and everybody else basically just going to the last generation, the empire's out. Why? Because they were not doing the thing they were supposed to do, which is basically look after the well-beings of the commoners. So they're out, and they're replaced by the next empire, different from Europe, different from Japan, a lot of countries. In China, in all the Chinese history, there's no glorious family name, okay? So you were somehow related to the royal family, okay, enjoy your glory today within this empire. The next empire is going to start a totally different family name, and they will hunt you down and kill you and everybody in your family. Okay? So when in Japan and in Europe, there's certain family like might raise their eyebrow. Wow. There's no such thing in China because hey, you had your great time and now your time's out. You're out. That's it. So in Europe, you would see the royal families, they marry into each other. It doesn't matter, different language, different regional power. They're all related, right? The divine bloodline, right, goes down indefinitely. Not in Chinese history. No, 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 no. Okay? When you're out, you're out. From boom to bust. That's it. So even the empire was like that. Think about today. A company, well, when you have the great time, enjoy it while you still have it. So this is what I was talking about, from boom to bust. Now, that is a life cycle span to recognize in a pattern for almost everything. This, seasonal change. Oh, okay, so you see the color change of the, leaf on your trees, everything else. Life, animal, organization, state, okay, political party. It applies to all of this. Now, that is the Daoism I will talk to you about in the next session, which will be the first 6 Chinese characters of that book, Dao De Jing. So until then, ciao.